Imagine Pacific Ocean heats up thousands of kilometers away from India, and the farmers of India began to worry as they fear the rainfall or monsoon rainfall would be deficit, impacting their crop yield and agriculture. So in this video, we are going to discuss about a phenomena called as El Nino and most intense form of El Nino, that is called as Super El Nino. The question that is in everybody's mind is that is Super El Nino a bad news for India's monsoon? Should farmers in India worry? Should policymakers and planners worry as food scarcity might be on the anvil? So first of all, let us try to understand why this particular topic is being talked about. So, as per the recent estimate from the Indian Meteorological Department as well as other scientific bodies across the world, it is expected that in 2026, Pacific Ocean is going to warm not more than normal as such. Subsurface heat built up and changing winds is something that we are seeing across the Pacific Ocean. And the unusual warming of Pacific, especially in the eastern and central part, is what we call as El Nino. El Nino basically is a Spanish term that simply means little child, because the arrival of El Nino is associated with the arrival of Jesus Christ in the South America. So higher probability of strong El Nino comes into picture whenever you have above normal warming in the Pacific Ocean. And though the phenomena seems to be taking place far, far away from India, because we are in Indian Ocean and the El Nino is taking place in the Pacific Ocean, but because the oceans of the earth are interconnected bodies, the influence of El Nino is also seen over Indian monsoon. So, first of all, the effect of this to some extent we are seeing in the summer already. Extreme temperatures have been recorded all across India, and for example in the Banda, that is in Uttar Pradesh, in Banda temperature of 47.4 degrees Celsius was recorded, which was highest till date in the April 25. Many urban areas of India, especially North India, Peninsular India, are experiencing temperature in the range of 40 to 45 degrees Celsius, and IMD has reported heat wave like condition across many regions of India as such, that is causing trouble to the people as such. Now, the most common concern due to the effect of El Nino is the agriculture sector, where the fear of weak monsoon is continuously being talked about. The monsoon, whenever it becomes weaker, we know that roughly 60% of India's farmland is still to a large extent dependent on the monsoon rainfall for the irrigation, supply of water to the fields, where you have the cultivation of the kharif crops such as paddy, rice or paddy. So that is being at risk, put at risk. Water scarcity can be seen, as there is less water, there will be less water in reservoirs, lakes, tanks and all that. Power generation would be affected because hydroelectric generation would be affected as such. And overall, by this discussion, we can clearly say that the monsoon rainfall is critical not only for one sector or one certain part of India, but it is critical for the entire economy. That means if monsoon rainfall is deficit, entire economy is going to face the brunt of it. Media often links El Nino to drought. That means generally you will see in the normal discussion, whenever you have the occurrence of El Nino in the Pacific Ocean, India experiences drought. That is the general belief. To what extent this belief is correct, we are going to analyze this in the later part of the video. Now, first we have to understand that what is El Nino. As we have seen, El Nino is the warming of central and eastern Pacific Ocean. This we can understand by looking at these two particular comparative images. Now, if you look here, this is your Pacific Ocean here. Now, the yellow region means temperature is slightly high, elevated. The darker the color, higher is the temperature. So now you can see between January to November how temperature has changed. In January you have slight warming of the Pacific Ocean. In November 2015 we can see you have darker color. That means strong warming of the sea surface temperature in the Pacific, and this is something that we call as El Nino. El Nino alters wind and rainfall patterns and thus has influence across the global climate, including monsoon of India. Now, if we talk about the classification of El Nino, it is done into several categories. We have discussed El Nino is the warming, right? Warming of the Pacific Ocean temperature. So when you talk about warming, you have average temperature, general temperature. So general temperature suppose is 28 degrees Celsius. So if in a particular year temperature increases by 0.5, we can call it as El Nino, but weak El Nino. If temperature increases to 1 degree Celsius, we call it as a moderate El Nino. If strong temperature increase is seen up to 1.5 degrees Celsius, it becomes a strong El Nino. If temperature rises by more than and equal to 2 degrees Celsius, we call it as a very, very strong El Nino. Now, you remember in the beginning we have discussed about appearance of super El Nino this year. Now, there is no scientific term or scientific formal term that what is Super El Nino? Super El Nino simply informally is believed to be a condition or situation where temperature rise in the Pacific Ocean is much more higher than usual. That means more than 2 degrees Celsius as such. Now, how El Nino and Indian monsoon is related? Let us try to look at this particular diagram. So, first of all, there is no consistent relationship. As I told you, there is general belief that every El Nino years will bring drought. That is very, very incorrect. Not every El Nino years bring drought. And if you want to verify it on the basis of the data, since 1950, we have experienced 16 El Nino years. But out of the 16 El Nino years, only 7 years had weak monsoon. That means we can say there is roughly 50%, 40% to 50% of correlation. So there is a 50-50 chance. If El Nino occurs, 50% chance we have weak monsoon, 50% chance we have average or above average monsoon. A strong El Nino does not necessarily and always leads to weaker monsoon, lesser rainfall and drought-like situation. So that's the first important point we have to understand here. Now question is that why El Nino taking place in the Pacific Ocean is able to influence monsoon winds flowing over India? The reason is simple. Monsoon winds, that is the southwest monsoon in the summer, is flowing like this. And these are nothing but actually the southeasterly trade winds that flow like this. So southeasterly trade winds are flowing like here. They cross the equator, Coriolis force reverses and Coriolis force causes the winds to start moving in the rightward direction. So it is the southeasterly trade winds which become southwesterly monsoon winds. Now imagine how these southeasterly trade winds are moving. So generally these are easterly winds. They are moving from east to west. Due to El Nino, in the Pacific Ocean, you have high temperature. And we know the relation that if there is a high temperature on the surface, the pressure becomes lower. So if pressure becomes low, that means the winds which were flowing toward India earlier, some of these winds would get attracted by these low pressure areas and they would start flowing towards South America. That means we can say overall, the entire strength or circulation of easterly winds would reduce. And if the southeasterly winds reduces in the intensity, southeasterly monsoon winds reduces in intensity, that causes weaker monsoon and below normal rainfall. Now, let us look at the case studies to prove the point that not every El Nino is a drought year in India. So, 1997 is the best example. In 1997, the Pacific Ocean witnessed what we can call as one of the strongest El Nino events. As we can see from the earlier diagram that you have, entire area was kind of reddish in color as such. India, on the other hand, experienced what? Near normal rainfall. So you would say that if the El Nino event was so strong, easterly trade winds would become very, very weak. If easterly trade wind become weaker, that means normal rainfall should not be seen in India. But that we are witnessing, and to some extent it is because of the other factor that comes into picture here called as positive IOD. IOD stands for Indian Ocean Dipole. So it's not that some changes are taking place in the Pacific Ocean, they are taking place over the Indian Ocean as well. Now, when you talk about the Indian Ocean, this is what you can say is the positive phase of IOD. So, this is your India. Suppose that right now El Nino event is going on. But at the same time, if positive phase of IOD is being witnessed, positive phase of IOD simply means that in the Arabian Sea or overall we can say the entire Western Indian Ocean, temperature is quite higher compared to Eastern Indian Ocean. If temperature is higher in the Arabian Sea, Western Indian Ocean, there is more evaporation. More evaporation means more dense clouds will form. More dense clouds means more rainfall you can experience here. Because majority of rainfall that we witness over Indian landmass comes from the western side, comes from the Arabian Sea side. So the rainfall or the amount of rainfall that should have been reduced due to the effect of El Nino to some extent is being compensated by the positive phase of Indian Ocean Dipole that has raised the temperature of Arabian Sea or Western Indian Ocean. So this is a simple point we have to keep in mind. The monsoon is a very complex mechanism. It does not depend directly on single or two factors. It depends on a multiple factor. And some of the key monsoon drivers, as we have seen, is the Indian Ocean Dipole. Positive phase favors the monsoon, strengthens the monsoon. Somali jet, you have a country that is Somalia in Africa. So you'll see a kind of jet stream coming from Somalia. The Somali jet stream, if it is stronger, you will have higher amount of rainfall. Madden-Julian oscillation is another phenomena. It refers to the phenomena where you have convection, strong convection in one phase of the ocean. Strong convection means more wind, strong winds are rising up. They carry the water vapor, causes dense cloud formation. So imagine El Nino year is being recorded, but at the same time the convective phase of Madden-Julian oscillation lies over the Indian Ocean, over the Indian continent. In that case, the decrease in rainfall by El Nino would be compensated by the favorable Madden-Julian oscillation. Monsoon trough, that is a low pressure area. We know that stronger the low pressure, stronger is the pull of the wind. So many times monsoon trough itself is very low pressure zone and it attracts more winds from the nearby ocean, thus compensating for the loss by El Nino. Or low pressure system, as we have discussed, that develops locally in different part of India. So that is also we have to take into consideration to understand the impact of El Nino. Changing pattern, however, we are seeing. That means we cannot now simply say that El Nino causes reduced rainfall or creates possibility of drought over India. It changes from different region to different region. So if El Nino is taking place, what we generally experience that in southern India you have a stable link. That means it will generally result in lesser amount of rainfall. Northern India you have much stronger influence. Central India influence of El Nino is not seen. It is kind of weaker correlation. And thus we can say that regional variability between south, north and central region can be seen, and this variability is not only fixed, it is actually continuously increasing. To some extent climate change, global warming can be found to be a determining factor here. Now question is that why we are worrying that El Nino can cause monsoon weakness, weakened monsoon. The reason is because of the impact on agriculture, because reduced rainfall affects the crop yield and especially rice, which is the cereal crop, which is one of the most important staple crop of India, their cultivation and yield directly correlates with the amount of rainfall received during the monsoon season. So it has become highly vulnerable crop, and majority of farmers in the Great Plains of India, in the coastal plains of India are dependent upon rice cultivation. So their livelihood would also get adversely affected. Irrigation and soil moisture, however, also matter. So we cannot say that always we will have drought or low production if El Nino year is taking place, but at the same time you have well developed irrigation facilities by construction of dams, micro irrigation facilities, watershed you have developed, or if you already have good amount of soil moisture, then that can also compensate the effect of El Nino. And the most important, it's not how much rainfall is taking place over India, it's more about when did the rainfall occur. If rainfall took place at the time when you are sowing the crops, when it is most required by the plant, that means it would be able to increase your yield. But even if a heavy surplus amount of rainfall happens, once the requirement is gone, once the requirement is no longer there, that would not have any impact on the crop as such. So the timing of rainfall is very critical to have a proper understanding of the effect of El Nino on Indian agriculture. Now, from the entire discussion, if we have to conclude and take a key takeaways, what is that? So first of all, everywhere we are talking about the super El Nino occurrences this year. It does not necessarily mean that there is going to be a guaranteed drought in India. As we have seen, many other factors affect monsoon. If those factors are favorable, effect of El Nino can be compensated. Multiple factors influence monsoon. Focus should be on local forecast as well. It's not only about at all India level what kind of rainfall variation we would see, but in the local areas. For example, in many part of India, rice is not being cultivated. So effect would be minimal. But in the Great Plains of India, if you have low rainfall, coastal plains you have low rainfall, impact would be much more intense. Adaptive planning is needed. Obviously, we cannot say now that okay, because super El Nino does not need that not result in guaranteed drought, we should not worry about it. Obviously, we have to take this into consideration because it is obviously one of the important factors. So it should be part of your adaptive planning. That means if possibility of drought arises, how would we handle it? How would we manage water stress? How would we manage water scarcity? How would we provide relief to the farmers who are impacted by this drought in the future? So that's why government takes into account all this all these factors and help in properly planning agriculture policy in the near future. So that's all for this particular video. If you like the video, please like the button, share with aspirants, and subscribe channel for more such content. Thank you very much.